Hey everybody, my name is freaking Nick and welcome to Hooked Ones. This is a new show in which I interview different guests from the Dead by Daylight community while we are currently playing Dead by Daylight. My guest for this first episode is Pixel Bush. He is the DBD Lore Guy. You probably know him if you know my channel, and he was very kind to join us on this, and I hope you guys have a good watch. Let me know what other guests you'd like to see on the show. So this is the first episode of what I am currently calling Hooked Ones, where we have our guests on the show and we chat in games of DBD. Get it? Hot Ones?
Yeah, I like that. That is an elegant name. It took me a second.
It's going to be very apt when we're only doing this in Survive with Friends, because that's where we'll be spending most of our time anyway. But
fair play.
Oh, we have a couple of viewer questions. Are you ready to field them? Okay.
Hell yeah, let's go.
This one comes from Starry Erica, and she asks, what are some potential killer combos that you would love to play as or against in 2v8?
All right, that's actually a really good shout, because you always think of all the disastrous combos that you wouldn't want to deal with, like Plague and Twins or something. But it's hard to think. But the ones that would be interesting is a very different question, and I'd rather like that. Both the RE killers at once, like Wesker and Nemesis, just because I think it'd be really fun to throw a survivor into a zombie. That'd be a lot of fun, I think. There is the old visual overlay mess combos of like Trickster and Singularity, where you just can't see your own survivor portrait because of all the shit that's on it. That would certainly be an experience. I'm interested to see what they did with the chest items of like chest characters, whether they could combine them into like a one-size-fits-all counter item type thing. I think the other one would be interesting would be Ghostface and Dredge.
Oh yeah,
because Ghostface being able to or Myers and Dredge being able to stalk in Nightfall seems really evocative and like a really, really good time.
Yeah, I've seen people say like Ghostface and Myers, but that's one that I hadn't thought about.
What about you, Nick? You got any ideas about that?
I feel like you and I have a bit of a disconnect on what killers we like.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Which is, agree to disagree. It's fine.
Yeah,
we're human beings.
We have preferences.
But I would love to see I think Oni would be really cool, along with from the killer side, Oni would be great with Plague.
Yeah, honestly, those are the ones I foresee them having to change a lot. Killers that either keep you injured forever or just kill you if you're injured.
Uh-huh.
So Legion and Plague. So Legion and Plague / Oni and Twins. Plague and Twins would be a complete it would be fun for the killer's point of view. I would certainly agree with that as a Twins enthusiast. And I honestly like Plague and Oni a lot as well. They're some of my favorite killers. But I also think there would be some issues with that. I say there'd be some changes that need to be made, I think. But yeah. I think, it would certainly be interesting at least.
The first question that I've prepared for you is a layup. What is it about Dead by Daylight lore that you find so interesting?
I'll be honest, I think a lot of it is, I appreciate that it's a riff on our world. It's not like, say, League of Legends or Apex, where it's their own world that they've made with all the messes and let's be kind and say quirks that can come with a big a massive gaming company trying to build a unique world. I appreciate that the game like Dead by Daylight is a riff on our world. Look at a killer like Dredge that was based on the Jonestown massacre, a real atrocity that happened to real people. I find that to be so much more interesting than just another sci-fi or fantasy world.
One thing that you said in your 50,000 subscriber Q&A was that if you weren't doing Dead by Daylight lore, you would probably be talking about Overwatch lore. I know.
Yes.
Overwatch is maybe falls a little bit more in the creating their own world area than Dead by Daylight. But what are the similarities that attract you to both games, and what is it that ultimately led you to fall into Dead by Daylight?
Overwatch's story is a big patchwork of all the different histories, all these different characters, and from it you can kind of you can paint a picture of a bigger world, of Nigeria is prospering in Overwatch's world because they survived the Omnic crisis basically unscathed, and how that makes new social dynamics in a world like that. And the kind of characters that can come from a prosperous Africa, which you don't see very often in media. That's just an example of how Overwatch's tone of a more optimistic world kind of reflects how it fits in with the game's art style and the story and everything. And DBD is kind of the opposite, where it's a very grim and depressing world.
What if there was a conspiracy that went all the way to the top and it involved an elder god? Yeah, I feel ya.
Yeah. Oh, the trapper has trapped. Excellent.
No, where elk has where elked. What was it that made you decide on revolving your channel around Dead by Daylight over Overwatch?
I think it's because Overwatch kind of left their story to die. Like, about the time I started making videos, which was late 2020, like August the 30th, 2020 was my first video. And at that point, we hadn't had much new Overwatch story content in a long time, and weren't getting it for a decent amount of time because Overwatch 2 still had a while in the pipeline. And they'd kind of abandoned trying to tell original stories like until Overwatch 2 came out. So I was like, oh, cool, I'll just wait. I'll talk about DBD and come back to things when Overwatch 2 is out and figure out if the story is interesting enough for me to switch to like pivot and see whether they're taking the story seriously enough for me to want to make videos on it. And the problem is they just didn't start giving a shit, you know? The PvE missions that are supposed to be like, this is how Overwatch 2 is, this is what we're building it around, got mothballed, they got thrown away. They got delayed endlessly and then cancelled. Whereas Dead by Daylight at the same time was building its world out in really interesting ways. Things like the Black Veil being introduced, the Blight finally arriving at the game. Like, it's a completely different kettle of fish. Like DBD was getting bigger as Overwatch was stagnating. Like in terms of its world building.
And has your opinion on that changed with Overwatch 2, or is it only just solidified more?
I'm more sure of it than ever, especially with the way the PvE missions in Overwatch 2 that were like the reason Overwatch 2 was going to exist in the first place, were completely scrapped in favor of more battle pass stuff.
Let's just take a peek into the alternate universe where Pixel Bush is an Overwatch content creator. Do you think you would have kind of burnt on it by now then?
Well, I'm still like playing the game,
yeah,
and I still find it interesting to talk about. But honestly, probably yes. I think I would not be. I certainly wouldn't be a full-time creator like I am today if I'd have chosen Double Down on Overwatch, just because there's not as much there. Overwatch's story just never goes anywhere anymore, if it ever did. It sucks. It really, really sucks. There are isolated moments where it will change, like.
Dang, I dropped the ball there. I'm sorry.
No, I think for this entire game, I've left the ball firmly on the floor. It's not going anywhere. They seem to be very reluctant to move it forwards, and that's real sad. Whereas DBD doesn't really move forward because it's not really how the game works, and it sort of moves out, and like the world gets bigger. The history gets deeper. The Black Veil shit gets ever more complicated. It's going somewhere, and I enjoy that greatly.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's why, you and I, we're like the Shaq and Kobe of DBD lore, just holding it down. Equally relevant, but no, I'm kidding. But yeah, I agree. The lore is it's just fun. It's interesting, and it keeps expanding. And I think that's a fantastic way of putting it. So we do have Nicolas Cage, and Matthew Cote said that their first choice to get an IRL person as a survivor was Tony Hawk. But he had to decline because Activision, they have his rights in perpetuity. He can't be in anything that's not Tony Hawk. Can you think of any IRL people that you think would fit DBD and like thematically, or that you would at least just want in the game?
Okay, here's the big one. I talked about this. I made a video on this one before, and I've even had a response from the person in question when I talked about it. James A. Janisse of Dead Meat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. James said a little while ago on a live stream, about a year ago, I think it was about when Chucky came out, that he said, there's been a lot of people who said I should be a survivor, and he's actually said he would love it. He'd really like to be a survivor.
I see a lot of people asking about Dead by Daylight and if Chelsea and I can be survivors. We won't say no to that. Go ahead, make us survivors. We would be very thrilled, of course.
So I made a little video on that, being like, what if they actually did make James a survivor in my Potential and Problem series? I'm not joking, only a couple of days ago, James actually watched that video and left a little comment talking about how much he liked it and how much he'd like love to be a survivor in DBD. And it was like, that was a real I was kind of starstruck there, seeing that little highlighted comment on that video. I was like,
damn moment, yeah.
It really was. It was awesome. Given James's enthusiasm for the project, I genuinely would be surprised if we saw it over the next couple of years.
Wheat Draws has a question for you. What killer do you think evokes the perfect fantasy of playing as a character in a video game, either as lore accurate or just evokes the feeling of that character?
I think I'm going to have to answer this in separately, in two different ways. One for a killer and one for a survivor based on their perks. I think as killer, I'm probably going to have to make my answer here be Pinhead, because you know what they say, people can't stand playing against Pinhead. It really is like pleasure and pain indivisible. But the thing about Pinhead is the whole point of the Cenobites is that is like effortless exercise of the power of incredible agony, and everything about Pinhead sells that brilliantly. It sells it so well. Like everything from the animations is like Pinhead doesn't touch anything himself apart from when he has a survivor on his shoulder. The chains feel very precise, and yet like the actual aiming a chain is very, very precise, but you can get them just right with it. When the chain hunt starts, you literally think they're in a world of pain now, and then the score comes on the top, and you're like, yeah, they actually are. Like even things down like the unique lament configuration, like Killer Instinct that it has when you're solving the box, and the voice lines, and it all just comes together so beautifully. I truly believe Pinhead is like in every way a peak killer release in every single way. I could talk about Pinhead for days, about how well made Pinhead is. For Survivor, I think I'm gonna have to give it to Lara.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like Lara is superb. Like she got the voice of classic Lara and the model and dress style of Survivor Lara. So I got a bit of things for everybody. The perks super evocative. I remember I was recording some Tomb Raider footage when I was playing the Tomb Raider games, like in preparation for my video on Lara, because I've been a Tomb Raider fan since I was like 6. I've been playing those games for longer than I've been on the internet. So I was playing the 2013 Tomb Raider for a while. The PTB hit, so I played Lara on the PTB, and I think, right, I need to find a chest to use my perk, to use Specialist. So I pressed Q, and Q is the button in Tomb Raider 2013 that shows all the collectibles around you. It's a survival instinct button, and my brain just fast-tracked immediately to just, Lara's in the middle of my screen. She looks like this. She's running like this. Oh, I'm playing Tomb Raider. I'll look for things like I'm looking for like salvage. And my brain just defaulted thinking I was playing Tomb Raider. Mm-hmm. And I've never had that feeling with any other character before. And that's where I hit like, damn, this is really, really well done. Especially with the perk designs, where it's like, you're scrabbling around, disabling traps, salvaging for raw materials to improve your gear. It's so wonderfully evocative. I love. She's my current P100 quest right now. I was getting Lara to Pretty 100 because it's such a great adaptation into the fog. Love it, absolute bits.
While we're on the topic of Tomb Raider, there's been a lot of concern from, I don't know if maybe it's a vocal minority, but a very vocal minority of people who are a little frustrated that Dungeons and Dragons and Tomb Raider aren't horror franchises. And one of your tweets said it way better than I ever could. You said we should stop looking at the licensed inclusions as, is this thing horror or not, and more as, does this fit tonally? Could you expand on that? What do you think is what's a horror franchise that you love that's not a tonal fit, and then what's a non-horror IP that's not in DBD that you think would be a tonal fit?
Okay. The big thing about adapting a horror property into DBD is, can you make a thematic fit that can be expressed through gameplay? That is as simple as I can make it. And great example of a horror series that you can't do that for, something like American Psycho or Silence of the Lambs, where the antagonists, the quote unquote killers, are just guys. I know we've had Ghostface, I know we've had even Skull Merchant, but I think you can't really express the themes of those IPs within DBD's context, and unless I'm just being horribly unimaginative here, and without the themes, kind of what's the point? I've seen people who are like, oh, I want to adapt the Hannibal TV show for Dead by Daylight, so here's giving Hannibal like Wendigo powers to have it act like the Wendigo hallucinations in the Will Graham experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, at that point, just make your own just make your own character, because it's so different from the source material that what's the point of having it in the first place?
Yeah.
You could theoretically adapt it, but at that point, I almost question what the point is.
Your Steam name and your alternate name reflects this. You are widely regarded as the DBD Lore Guy. You've mentioned that sometimes you feel a little bit of stress and pressure from that, but what are some of the pros and cons that come from it?
Well, the biggest pro is that it lets me yap ad infinitum about the shows and the films that I love and real life history and all sorts of stuff. It gives me a very unique position in the community as well, where even during periods where the gameplay is not widely popular, I still have things that I can talk about. Like, for a lot of people, they felt like, say, OG Skull Merchant's release was like a low point in DBD for them. And ignoring my own personal relationship with that killer, it's like I still had things I could talk about during that time, even though to say if you're a traditional gameplay streamer, there might not be so much for you to talk about because the gameplay doesn't interest you. So there's just not as much there. Like, I've been able to keep making my videos even when I've been burned out of playing the game, because I don't really have to play it that much. But it definitely has its liabilities, and a lot of it's been getting better, admittedly. But a big part of it, Sable, what are you doing?
I thought you were saying Sable's a big part of it.
No. No, Sable is not a part that's made it better. It's that a lot of people, less so, like, especially in like the middle time, so to speak, when people knew me, but before a lot more like DBD lore creators and lore discussions were taking place, people would very much take what I said at face value, and for better or for worse, where like they'd either just listen to what I said uncritically and just kind of regurgitate it, or they would treat what I'm saying as if I'm trying to make it some objective truth, and then have a go at me based on this fiction they've made about what motives they think I have behind my content. Like, a great example of this was End Transmission Singularity. I was on the record not liking End Transmission's lore at all. Like number one End Transmission hater over here, and a lot of it's strictly a case of I don't mind if you love it, then you love it, and I'm not gonna yuck your yum for liking it. But a lot of people took my criticisms at complete face value and just didn't read the stories themselves. And while others were thinking I was trying to impose my will on the community by talking about how much I didn't like it, and it's like none of that is even close to true. I'm just giving my opinion.
My follow-up question is very much intrinsically related to what you just said. How much has your stress level gone up now that behavior has put a doomsday clock of 10 months for when you have to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's?
Well, I don't know if anyone has seen my video I made on like potential problems FNAF that I made a little while ago, but it must have been about 10 months ago actually, where I was talking about how I do not have a fondness for that franchise at all. I really don't. But I'm quite upfront about that too. Like, I'm not going to pretend to be a secret like FNAF pilled Bonnie cell because that's what people want. Like, but I also don't want to yuck people's yum with, like, if you love it, you love it, and I'm going to do my best to do it justice when I do come to talk about it. But I've accepted this long before it got announced, that if I ever did come, it's just not a chapter for me, and that's perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. Like it'll be exhausting to talk about, I don't doubt. especially because I'll make one mistake somewhere. I'll someone's blorbo I'll get something wrong, and then I'll have rocks thrown at my house for the next 10 weeks. Or I won't be positive enough about it, and then I'll get harassed on it for Twitter for 3 months. But end of the day, I've kind of gone beyond the point of caring. Like, if it's coming, it's coming. There's nothing I can do about it. So best I can do is try and give my opinions as in the most non-inflammatory way I can, while still being, honest, and just make the video and move on. Worst case scenario, people don't like it, people yell at me for a bit, and then I make the next video. There's only limited ways to go. It's not going to be really interesting to me, but that's kind of the worst thing I can say. I think this is going to be the first DVD chapter I don't buy.
Really?
Yeah, I can't bring myself enough to care. And I don't feel comfortable giving my money to Scott Cawthon. It really is that simple. Okay. I'm not going to yell it from the rooftops for the next 10 months because that's not going to help anything.
Yeah.
But when it comes out, I'll just go, okay, I'll play it on the PTB, and then I'm not going to buy it.
That's because
it's a series I don't care for from a guy I don't care for. And I'm almost certainly not going to play. I wouldn't feel good playing the killer or playing the survivor or whatever. It's the perks come for the shrine, and that's about it.
So something that you said earlier is that one of the, for better or for worse, since because you are regarded as the DBD lore guy, people take what you say, and if it's an interpretation, they'll take it as fact. You have famously Mandela affected one of your fan theories into canon, and that is that Pyramid Head is in Dead by Daylight to punish the entity. What are some other fan theories or some headcanons that you hold that you maybe you haven't shared? Just random ones. Like, for instance, me, I think Ghostface was a former Mormon. This just comes from his Utah driver's license, from his repressed actions, That's just
that is really interesting, and I like that a lot. Now that you said it, I can't unthink it. First of all, I hate that theory now. It was one of my earlier videos.
Is this your Oppenheimer?
No, well, yeah, it is. I wish I'd never said it. I've thought that for years. I do not like the theory. I wish I'd never said it.
Really?
It was from one of my earlier videos, and I realized not long after I saw people circulating it that it's like, this has kind of gone a bit out of my control. And it was just almost a thought experiment that I had. I didn't even necessarily believe it fully myself. As someone, especially as someone who really likes Silent Hill 2, I wouldn't go so far as to say I disavow it, because at the end of the day I did say it. I'm not gonna pretend I didn't. I just know if I made the video today, I wouldn't have brought it up. Or if I would have done, I would have been very, very careful with how I did it. In a way that I don't think I was in that video. It's that simple. Yeah, I do have a lot of my own headcanons. I've even got a video scripted I might use at some point, where I talk about my favorites. I've got a few here, and I'd like to see what you and chat think of them. I believe Adiris's followers, the ones who disappeared from that cave when she was taken by the entity, I believe they became the first Black Veil cultists.
I agree.
Because we don't know the origins of the Black Veil, but we do know that they are very, very old. They use human sacrifice just like she did when she was a priestess. The robes and the language and the chanting, it's all very, it's taken from the cult practices that there wasn't a cult then, it was just religion. The priesthood she was a part of, a lot of it seems to be passed down from the kind of Babylonian, Sumerian religious practices. So I think the Black Veil, they were the first Black Veil cultists. They saw that dark miracle the entity performed by curing them of their disease and saving Adiris, and became its disciples on Earth. The other one I brought up in a video before is, I believe the Dread was an attempt by the Black Veil to make their own unknown.
Okay.
Because the unknown is like a thought form. It is brought to life, at least as far as I can tell, by the fears and by unexplained mysteries, and people investigating, people thinking about it too much.
Mm-hmm.
And the Dread was created under similar conditions. The whole message spread to the people of Otto's cult was that if you don't do these things, the Drawny, the dark thoughts will manifest into a creature and get you. and then that became the creature, that became the dredge. Artificially creating conditions that created the unknown naturally.
I love that one. What's a headcanon or a fan theory that circulates that you hate? For instance, for me, I hate it whenever I talk about Michael Myers and people are like, by the way, he could kill the entity if he really wanted to.
Yes, that's the one I have written down. It's such... I can't stand it. I just stood up in my chair because it's sweaty in here, but also out of disdain for that theory. I can't stand it. It's Michael Myers. I've seen it cropping up a lot lately with Vecna because of the mark of negation.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, if you think even Vecna could stand a chance against the entity, you do not understand the entity. There's a difference between a fictional character and a writer. Like, the entity crosses the bounds between what is fiction and what is real. Because what is fiction, well, what is real in another. And the entity can pull from both. Yeah. So, like, to assert that Vecna or any other killer could be close to the entity's power level would be to assert that they're powerful enough to basically escape being fiction and threaten the writer. And the only character I can think of who comes close to that is Alan Wake.
Hell yeah, Alan Wake, let's go.
He's genuinely the closest.
Yeah.
Is Alan Wake. I've got a few other brief headcanons that I haven't mentioned in videos before that I think you might like.
All right, let's hear them.
The big ones are Deathslinger is an ancestor of John Kramer.
Okay, yeah, I'm seeing the vision.
Okay, because we see in Slinger's lore, he talks about devices that he's built or that he's planned that are basically torture devices that he puts on people. Like his childhood bullies, there was a device that he designed to gouge out their eyes. Mm-hmm. And the way it's described in Deathslinger's, I think it's in his tome, is it's very, very similar to the design of John's traps. He's also from the same neck of the woods, and his actor Tobin Bell has Irish ancestry. It all lines up just well enough that obviously that will never be like, that could never ever be proven ever because it's a licensed IP, but I think it would, I can see it. I can see the vision in my brain of like Amanda rocking up at, or Caleb rocking up at the Gideon meat plant, seeing the designs and going, that looks rather familiar. Mm-hmm. The other ones are Danny Ghostface inspired the Father Death costume and Billy and Stu.
Okay.
Because his lore is set before the events of Scream by quite some time.
Yeah.
Like he's in the 80s. He's not 90s like Scream is. And clearly the Father Death costume must have come from somewhere. Mm-hmm. Like marketing execs don't just come up, could just come up with that out of nowhere. But it's clear that there were murders committed in costume by somebody before the events of Scream. That's why Billy and Stu took it up. They were copycats.
They are far too dumb to come up with that by themselves.
Exactly. I reckon they copycatted it from a real life serial killer, a guy who wore the classic Ghostface mask on impulse one night just because it was fun.
Okay, while we're on the topic
and they killed a bunch of college students.
While we're on the topic of Danny, can I bounce one off of you? Okay.
Absolutely.
In addition to being a former Mormon, so in his tome lore, it mentions that like he's obsessed with all these past serial killers in his world, and it mentions the Miner. In my brain, that is how the Trapper is known in that world. Yes,
I could very much see that. Very, very much see that.
All right. Do you have any other headcanons that you'd like to share? Or?
The only other one is I believe Charlotte and Victor. I have a lot of theories about twins, but this is my favorite, is that if the twins weren't like cast out of society because of their deformity, if like Madeline had been able to hide them or get them accepted, or if they hadn't been born conjoined, they would have lived in the lap of luxury because I think their mother was a noblewoman. Okay. Like there's a lot of evidence to support that in their add-ons. Like Charlotte's got like her mother's scarf and gloves and her and like a bottle of perfume as her add-ons, all relics of Madeline's past life. And those are the kind of things that, you know, like a French nobility would have access to. And it would and given how divided this like French society was back then, because this was pre-revolution, I think if Charlotte and Victor hadn't been cast out of society for any number of reasons, they would have grown up as the children of a noblewoman in the absolute lap of luxury.
So, going based off of what you just said and what you said at the very beginning, you talked about like that Dead by Daylight is a riff on our real world. And one thing I love about your content is you go hard in the paint with researching the settings, the locations, the culture at the time. So is there a setting that you feel like they haven't explored that they should explore that you would love to see?
As a couple, and the big one to me is like anywhere in Asia that's not in Japan, because we've had a Japanese survivor, we've had 2.5 Japanese killers. Adrian Skull Merchant she's half Japanese. Obviously, born and raised in Brazil, but to a Japanese depth. And she's immersed a lot in Japanese culture, even though she is from Brazil. So, and yet tons of places from places like India, Singapore, like Thailand, there's so many possibilities for for an East Asian characters that just don't get properly explored. And even the closest you've got aside from that is Hattie, and she's a second generation Indian immigrant to Canada. So it's like we haven't had any characters from that era of the world, from that area of the world ever. That or Australia/New Zealand.
Soyokaze asks, how do you feel about Carmina Mora's tome lore?
I think it's brilliant. I've got a video in the process scripted about it. I absolutely love it. I think it fixes most of the issues that her base lore had. I am also a big fan of the renewed lesbian reading of Carmina with her relationship with her friend Flores. Well, I say friend.
They were roommates.
I know. Yeah, they were really close roommates. But it's like, I know a lot of sapphic people who I was literally in call with someone, a very gay lesbian friend of mine. You might know her from, she's a prominent artist in the community, Effie Glass Azula. Makes a lot of, her art is wonderful. She's done a lot of art for me. But she is a lesbian, and she writes, and she loves her, she loves a lesbian representation. So when we read that Carmina story together, and she was like, especially Flores, her chair, it was like I could hear her jaw hit the floor, and that made me happy enough that it's like I absolutely love this. I absolutely love this fucking story. It gets everything right, and it really did put right a lot of what went wrong with Carmina's base lore, in my opinion. I'm a huge fan of it. So
the final viewer question comes from Fairy King. We're branching off into conjecture territory.
Oh yeah, let's go.
It says, which killer and which survivor do you think the entity would favor most based only on their lore?
It's only on their lore. I think Ghostface is definitely up there. Because he's just sort of happy to be here. He's not ambitious, and he has a lot of respect for the traditions of horror and the people who the people who do the killing. So I think it would be. I think Ghostface is definitely a good candidate, and even with the way that his straps and things float, it's like clearly the entity gets on pretty well with him. The Ghostface is an example answer I'd probably give to that question. And for survivors, honestly, probably Alan Wake, because it would be fun. Like Alan's very different from the survivors they normally take. He's had a bit more experience with eldritch powers. Although I also think Ash would be another example of just being a bit of a breath of fresh air for the big old sky spider. The savior of humanity and whatnot, just stuck in the trials of everybody else.
Final question that I have prepared for you is:
all right, I'm ready.
There are several spin-offs to Dead by Daylight in the works. There's the casting of Frank Stone, there's Project T, there's the Dead by Daylight film. What do you hope to see from a lore perspective from these? And what do you hope to not see?
Good hit. Sorry. I think casting of Frank Stone, I'm going in with a completely open mind, because it's Supermassive. Trying to predict what Supermassive is going to do is not the easiest thing in the world. They're a studio with rapidly who, despite the formula of their games being broadly the same, they vary a lot in terms of tone, in terms of storytelling quality. I'm going to say, there's a lot that makes supermassive games like there's a lot in a supermassive game, and I don't know if if it would be a reasonably smart idea to make any kind of prediction about supermassive.
You had first.
But
Oh, I borked that one.
I gotta get the cage on the guy down earlier. Yeah. The interesting one to me, lore-wise, is Project T, though, because that gives us something we haven't seen before, which is a like view out of the entity drama outside the trials that's not in the Observer times. So I'm ready for some wild shit. I'm ready to see killers the entity has thrown away because they didn't play by the rules. I'm ready to see, hopefully, a window into the Observer's universe itself, like what might happen to the Observer's world that the entity reportedly like killed. Sorry, but like, yeah, I think Project. There's loads of ways that Project T can expand, but I really hope Saku's either playable or like a prominent NPC, because she's brilliant, and I think the community would really like her if they were given a chance to.
Oh yeah, she's the coolest Dead by Daylight lore character that nobody knows about.
Absolutely.
A lot of content creation has to deal with like reconciling what's interesting to you with what's interesting to your audience, because you don't always see eye to eye on this.
100%.
Is there a video that you think that you don't regret making, but you like went into it knowing this is a video for me and me alone? If it pops off, it pops off. If it doesn't, and then it kind of flopped. What's something you like, a video you're proud of but didn't perform super well?
It's my Saw analysis videos, but especially my one on Saw 3, because I made a video for like Halloween 2021, I think, talking about like why I think Saw 2 is one of the best horror sequels of all time. And it did really well, that video, over time. Like it started off badly, but started to pop off really, really nicely. And I thought, you know what? I'll try and make another one of these, make it like a series talking about the films that I like, one of my favorite films of all time, the Saw movies. And then my video on Saw 1 didn't do great. And so I abandoned the series for a while, but people who watched the first two videos were like, Will, do Saw 3, do Saw 3, do Saw 3. Especially after the Saw tome came out, which assassinated Amanda Young's character. I wanted to like put it to rest, and like here's Saw 3 was like Amanda Young done right, you know. And I made a video on Saw 3, and no one watched it. Like to this day, it's a massive heartbreaker that's my like. I was like, if this video does well, I'm going to start diversifying more and talking about horror movies in general. And that video, bottom of the barrel under view count, and that really, really stung, because I even made a video on Saw 10 when that came out, and that did really, really well. But that was that one video where I'm just like, I so wish it could have. I would love to diversify and talking more about horror movies that I love, but that was just a giant flashing neon sign saying, "Will, don't do this," and it broke my heart. It really did.
There's like Dead by Daylight players only care about Dead by Daylight. Get the hell out of here with that.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. All right, Pixel Bush. I'm gonna have to hop off stream, but I want to say thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate you. I think this is a W for a first episode of Hooked Ones.
It's been a really, really fun time. Been a hell of a host.